गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादशङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। नमामि गौडपादञ्च शङ्करं श्रीसुरेश्वरं स्वामिनं सच्चिदानन्दमिन्द्रं तं ज्ञानरूपिणे। ॐ ॐ ॐ। I think that the topic that is going on, I shall just repeat, and one more point is there about it. I think I shall discuss until I locate my book. We'll just discuss that. Purvapakshi, that is Bhamatikara told. See, this is very, very important, very interesting thing. Adhyasa is an event in time. This is what Bhamatikara thought. And Adhyasa has a cause. The cause is samskara. Now, samskara, we discussed already this point. I don't know how to do that. No. Even now I am not able to trace it. Okay. In reply to that, we told, Siddhanti Sachidananda Swamiji told, that the Vyavaharika Drishtya, from the standpoint of Vyavahara, this Bijankura Nyaya, that is the Bija produces Ankura, the seed produces the sprout, and the sprout produces the seed, next seed. So this Bijankura Nyaya, according to this maxim means a rule of Bijankura. If you follow that rule, similar to that rule in our life, Adhyasa leaves samskara. The samskara remaining there for some time, remaining hidden in the subconscious, unconscious mind, it reproduces a similar Adhyasa. So this is what Bhamatikara told. So here, in reply, Swamiji says, Bhashyakara has accepted this point. Bijankuradivat avidyakrita samsaraha. Samsara is like Bijankura. This is Kriyakaraka Adhyaropa Lakshanaha Samsaraha Atmani. This samsara is in the Atman, is comparable to Bijankura. So this statement I have referred, this Bhashyakara's statement comes from Brihadaranyaka Bhashya. In Brihadaranyaka, I referred Brihadaranyaka Bhashya. In that context, Bhashyakara is taking slightly different view, which I have explained. I think today everything is only disturbance alone. Yeah. I explained in my previous class that the objects within the world which occur in time and space and their experiences can have a causal state. An object within the world has a causal state. Experiences of the mind, experiences through mind. Through mind means a state of mind, a conscious mind. So the experiences through mind, after they cease, the experiences cease, they are stored, their impressions are stored in our mind. These impressions are called samskara. So these samskaras are possible in case of the objects and experiences within a state. This is what I told in my previous class. But a state as a whole cannot have a samskara. Okay. But Bhashyakara in Brihadaranyaka is telling a slightly different view. Even Swamiji also accepts which Bhashyakara says. This is an important point. Today I am going to discuss. I think you remember what I told in my class. I told. Again I say just in one more sentence. The objects within the waking state or the experiences through mind within the waking state can have the impressions, can leave impressions, and those impressions are stored in unconscious mind and they reproduce Adhyasa again. This is possible with reference to limited objects and limited experiences, but not the total experience of waking state. Waking state as a whole, if you take the waking state as a whole, that cannot have samskara. This is what I told. Okay. But now, keeping Bhashyakara's view, Bhashyakara's statement, Bhashyakara accepts even the state as a whole can have a samskara. This is an important point. In fact, this is the difference. This brings to us to that main difference between post-Shankarites and Shankarites. Now the question comes, do we have samskara of the whole waking state? Waking state as a whole, can it leave samskara or it can't live? If it lives, where does it live? It has to live only in the mind, because all experiences are in the mind and samskaras also should be left in the mind. But the mind is a part of a waking state, and in deep sleep there is no mind at all. Now, from the Vyavaharik standpoint, this is accepted. This is accepted as a Vyavaharik standpoint, Shankaracharya says, in the Brihadaranyaka and in other places also. But Vyakhyanakaras take this as their main point. What is this? The waking state, when it ceases. This is what they say. See, these Vyakhyanakaras say, and in a way, our Shankaracharya also accepts with a modification. What is this? When the waking as a state ceases, does it remain in some form or it is totally wiped out? Or doesn't exist at all? Vyakhyanakaras say the entire waking state merges into deep sleep. That means it remains in the deep sleep as a causal state, or in the form of samskaras, in the form of impressions, avyakta, unmanifest. Okay, the entire waking state remains in the deep sleep as avyakta, and again it produces in the next waking, it produces the next waking state. So the waking state as a whole, including the entire world, time, place and everything, the entire world included in the waking state, it goes into deep sleep. That means in the deep sleep it remains in the form of samskara, avyakta, and again it reproduces in the waking state. This is what Vyakhyanakaras say. Okay. Now, is it true? Vyakhyanakaras strongly hold this. All post-Shankarites, they make it as an essential point of their teaching. You can't reject this, it must be accepted. Okay. This is the major difference between Shankaras and post-Shankarites. Okay. Now the Shankaracharya himself says, from Vyavaharika, he clearly says this is acceptable from Vyavaharika standpoint. Means what? The reality is waking state doesn't leave any impression. State as a whole, if state as a whole has to leave its impression, where does it leave? Now the whole waking state is an entire mind, complete mind. In the complete mind, if you take the entire waking state as a one mind, as a one thought, there is no past and present and future. See, I think I give you a little explanation. If mind has two states, two or three, if it has got one tentative state of perceiving one thing, experiencing one thing, we leave that and come to this normal mind. A normal mind, when it experiences something, next moment it ends that experience. Okay, the mind goes into a next stage. Earlier it had one experience, now the experience comes to an end. When the experience comes to an end, mind continues. Okay, because experience is one part of the mind. Experience is one part of a mind, one aspect of the mind. Okay, one part only. So that when the experience ends, mind continues to have another experience. Then another experience. Like this, when the experience occupies a small part of the mind, that means one part of the mind, or at one time, one condition of the mind, let us say. One state of mind, one condition of mind. If one state of mind, one condition of mind is an experience, in another condition or in another state, that old state, old experience disappears, ceases, then mind assumes another experience. So, if a mind can have a tentative experience, and if that experience ends, naturally mind gathers its impression, because that experience leaves an impression in the mind, like our modern psychology says, subconscious, unconscious mind. It leaves a certain impression in your mind that gets stored in your subconscious or unconscious mind. So we don't use subconscious, unconscious mind, these names, because they are explained by psychologists and they have got their own complications. We simply say they are stored in the mind, that's all. We don't go into those technical details of psychologists. So what can be stored? An experience, when an experience ends, mind should continue. And that experience is a tentative state of mind. If it is a tentative state, when the experience ends, mind continues. Therefore, the samskara, the impression will remain, will get stored in the mind. And that stored impression can reproduce a similar experience again at the suitable time, when its right time comes. But here, this is okay, this is natural and acceptable to all of us, and we can see it very clearly. But if you take the waking as a state as a whole, waking state as a whole, is it one state of mind? This is the question. This is important. Is it one state of mind? If it is one state, if it is a one condition or one state of mind, when that state ends, that condition of mind ends, mind continues in another form. So it can retain, it can store its impressions. But in the waking state as a whole, when you are taking the entire mind, all states, all conditions put together. Now there is no another additional state of mind. All the states of the mind are included within the waking state. Therefore, we take it as a collective mind, the total mind. We call Samashti Manaha. Samashti Manassu, Samashti Manaha in Sanskrit. Samashti Manaha means the total mind, complete mind, the collective mind. Collective in the sense the complete mind. Complete mind means mind along with its inner states, conditions, changes, modifications, time and space, everything put together. Okay. Time means past, present and future. The entire past, the entire future. All the time is included in mind. Because through mind alone you experience time. Then the entire time you include in the mind. Then the entire waking state. Now the mind and waking state are not two. In the earlier example, in the earlier explanation, if mind is a part of a state, then mind keeps on assuming different states. Okay, different conditions. So the previous state of mind ends, previous experience ends, it leaves an impression, and therefore this mind can carry that old impressions and reproduce in another state similar to it. That is okay. But here, when we are talking as a state as a whole, now the state is not one part, one state of mind, because the mind and state is one. Okay. The entire waking state and the entire mind, they are one. They are not two. Neither the state is the part of mind, nor mind is part of the state. See this contrast? When you take the state as a whole, neither mind is not a one part of the state, nor state is one experience of mind. Because the mind, the entire mind, the total mind and the total waking state, when you bring them together, they are one, they are not two. Whether you call it mind, whether you call it state, they mean the same. Total mind and total state is one and inseparable, they are not two. Though you use two words, it is one experience. Therefore, in the earlier example, if mind assumes various states, one experience ends and it can leave samskara, impressions in the mind. But if you take the mind as a whole, that is waking state as a whole, when the waking ends, does the mind remain? Does the mind remain in another state? Does the mind continue? No, because the entire mind is included in the entire state. That means entire state is synonymous with entire mind. I think it is easy, you got it, and you think. The complete mind is synonymous with complete state. There, when the state ends, mind also ends. When the state ends, mind ends, then how can that state leave samskara? That's why I told in my previous class, state as a whole cannot have samskaras. State as a whole cannot leave samskara because state is not moving in time. Stating is not one of the states of the mind. It is not a given state of the mind. If a mind is taken as series of experiences or series of states, if mind is taken as series of thoughts, it is a serial of thoughts. Then waking state is not a one of the thought which comes and goes and mind continues later. No. That happens only with reference to limited experiences within waking state. But waking state as a whole, if you take, the entire mind is one with the entire waking state. In that condition, when the waking ends, mind also ends. Then the waking is not one of a states, and the mind does not continue after the waking ends. Therefore, it cannot leave impressions. So, the state and the samskara, state and impressions can't exist there like that. Therefore, state as a whole, if you take, it is mind as a whole. If mind as a whole, complete mind is included, then when the state ends, mind ends. Now where should the samskara remain? Therefore, our Sachidananda Swamiji explained it. Shankaracharya did not mean in so many words, but he just hinted, suggested in his explanations. Swamiji brought out it very clearly. Waking state as a whole cannot leave impressions. Because waking state, when waking state is, it is. When it is not there, that's all, it is not there. It leaves nothing. It leaves nothing. In Paramartha Chintamani, in Kannada we were discussing, each state is independent. It doesn't have a cause and effect. In one of the 5 Heggurtugalu, in the important salient points, in the salient points of Avastatraya Viveka, 5 salient points Swamiji discussed. Out of them, one of the salient point, I think a third or fourth, third or fourth, I don't remember. So that third or fourth salient point says this alone, means this alone. Each state is independent. It doesn't have samskaras in another state. See, the samskaras of one state don't exist in another state, because one state is not connected to another state. All the states are directly independent. All the states are independent and directly experienced by the Sakshi. So one state is not dependent on another. One state doesn't leave its samskara. So in the another state, all the 3 states are directly experienced by the Sakshi. This was one of the Heggurtugalu, one of the salient points, because an experience goes away, ends, it leaves some impressions in the mind alone. If the entire mind goes away, where should it leave impressions? It can't leave. Therefore, waking state as a whole, if you take it, it doesn't exist. Therefore, in Sushupti, what happens? When the entire waking state ends, no samskara remains in the deep sleep. Isn't it? Yet, so 2 things are here. Common man's thinking, Vyakhyanakara's thinking, and Siddhanti's prakriya. 3 points I'll say. Then you get it very clear. Common man thinks that when the waking state ends, it goes into deep sleep and again it wakes up. That means in the deep sleep, something remains in an unmanifest form, in a subtle form. In the form of its impressions, it remains. This is what common man thinks. Okay? Because common man takes in fact, common man doesn't think even this much. Common man thinks that when I go to sleep, waking state, waking world remains. When I go to sleep, but the waking world remains here alone. Okay, this is a very common man's thinking. But little, if you come to little higher stage, little open, in Shruti also, Upanishad also says, and Vyakhyanakaras take it seriously. They say that waking state merges into deep sleep. Means waking entire world goes into Avyakta, that is in Pralaya. Sushupti, Avyakta, Pralaya, all are same, but looked from different standpoints. So the entire waking state merges into deep sleep, but it remains in deep sleep in the form of seed, in the form of impressions. This is what Vyakhyanakaras say. Then what is Shankara's view? Shankaracharya or Sachidananda Swamiji or we say is, waking state doesn't leave its impression in the deep sleep. Deep sleep is also, deep sleep, waking are not interconnected like a cause and effect. So it is the Shastra who does the Adhyaropa. Because Sushupti is non-dual. It is an independent and non-dual. It has nothing to do with waking. Sushupti is not a product of waking. Product can be two ways. One is produced by something. Another product is when it vacates, its absence is also a result of it. Okay. When there was a pen before and now you remove it, now the hand is empty. This emptiness of the hand is created as a result of removal of pen. On removing the pen, the hand becomes empty. Okay. So the removal of pen is a karma, is an action which produces this absence of pen here. So sometimes this way, two way. Now is deep sleep product of waking state? Or deep sleep itself is independent? It is not connected to waking state at all. Deep sleep is not a state. It is non-dual swarupam alone. It is not a state because it is like a silence. When you speak, silence doesn't go away. Within the because silence is natural, self-existing. In the silence, when you speak, in spite of your speech, silence remains. Speech comes and recedes. Silence remains. Just like a wave is produced from water, even when there is a wave, water doesn't go away. Okay? When there is a reflection in a mirror, even when you are seeing reflection, the transparency of the surface of the mirror is transparent. It doesn't catch any colors, forms. It reflects but doesn't gather. Okay? It remains untouched by any reflection seen on its surface. So similarly, from the water, if wave appears, the water doesn't get affected. Water is not replaced by the wave. Okay? When the wave arises in water, wave doesn't replace water. Therefore, for the water to come to existence, removal of wave is not required. You see the difference? Removal of wave is not required for the water to exist because the appearance of wave doesn't obstruct the presence of water. Appearance of wave doesn't come in the way, doesn't obstruct the existence of water, because existence of water is independent whether it appears as a wave or no wave. Wave or no wave is immaterial to the water, to the existence of water. Wave or no wave, wave appears or doesn't appear, these two do not make any difference to the existence of water. Okay? Because the existence of water is independent of appearance as a wave or no appearance, ceasing to appear as a wave. The cessation of appearance of wave. So therefore, appearance and cessation of appearance, both of them do not affect the presence or existence of water, because existence of water is independent. Similarly, Sushupti is myself. Sushupti is not a tentative state. That it is a state, that it comes, is a wrong thinking from the waking state. Sushupti doesn't come. When the wave ends, water doesn't come. Does water come? Did it not exist before? Water has been existing throughout. So the wave ends, water doesn't start coming. Water existed even before wave was. Therefore, the presence and absence of wave is immaterial to the existence of water. Similarly, Sushupti means myself, not as an individual, as an Atma, non-dual Atma, all pervasive, infinite self. Infinite self alone remains. Therefore, Sushupti is not replaced, because Sushupti is formless. Like the formless space, you see here it is an empty space. The empty space, when you bring the hand Does this hand replace the space? It can't replace, because space is formless. Formless space is not replaced by the presence of hand, nor the space really comes into existence only when I remove the hand. When I remove the hand, can we say that the space came into existence just now when I removed the hand? No. Space existed even before the hand came. Even when the hand is, space existed. Even after the removal of hand, space exists like before. Similarly, water. Wave appears and goes away, still water exists like as ever as before. As ever as before. Similarly, Sushupti means non-dual existence of Atma, which is all-pervasive, which includes everything and excludes nothing. And such all-inclusive infinite existence is Sushupti. So when the waking world appears, Sushupti is not replaced. Sushupti is not replaced by waking state. When the waking state ceases, Sushupti doesn't begin. This is Sachidananda Swamiji's Prakriya. Sushupti neither begins, because there is no time in the experience of deep sleep. And time is not related to deep sleep. Deep sleep is such an experience which is not related to time. Therefore, it doesn't begin, doesn't end. Okay? Does water begin and end when the wave arises and wave disappears? When the wave arises, does the water begin? No. When the wave ends, does the water end? No. So, the beginning and ending of wave has nothing to do, has no effect on water. Presence of water, existence of water. Existence of water is ever before, is like ever before. Similarly, my pure existence, infinite existence, not being an individual, but the very pure existence, is infinite. That is deep sleep. Therefore, deep sleep doesn't begin when the waking ends. End of the waking is an appearance of deep sleep, that's all. Okay? The wave is an appearance within water. And the disappearance of wave, ceasing of wave, cessation of wave doesn't make any difference to water. Similarly, cessation of waking state doesn't make any difference to deep sleep, because deep sleep was not replaced by waking state. Deep sleep was not replaced by waking state. Therefore, when the waking state ceases, deep sleep doesn't pop up, because it has been existing all the time. It has been existing, and it exists even now and in future also. Therefore, deep sleep is like a space. Space is not replaced by hand. And when hand is removed, you can't say the space has arrived now. Space doesn't arrive newly, nor it is replaced by the presence of hand. Okay? Similarly, the waking state, ending of waking state doesn't begin the deep sleep. Deep sleep has been existing. Neither it begins nor it ends. Deep sleep is unrelated to time. That means it can't be thought in terms of time. It cannot be thought through time, related to time, within time. It cannot be located in time. Deep sleep cannot be located in time, because there is no reference to time from the standpoint of deep sleep. Because deep sleep is not something you have to imagine. It is not a state you come to have. It is not a state you come to get it and then you lose it. Deep sleep neither can be got nor can be lost, because deep sleep is yourself. It is just myself, nothing more, nothing less. Okay? It is synonymous to myself. Deep sleep is synonymous to myself. Therefore, neither you get it nor you lose it. Because you can't get yourself and then again lose yourself. You are just you. Very universal, all-pervasive, eternal existence. Self-existence is deep sleep, and that is myself. Therefore, I don't begin and end. Like a water doesn't begin and end with reference to wave. Okay. Similarly, my existence is deep sleep. Therefore, to exist me as a deep sleep, which is all-pervasive non-dual existence, I don't have to end the waking. Because even when there is waking, I exist. Waking doesn't replace my existence. Waking doesn't replace my existence in as much as wave doesn't replace the existence of water. Nor the water begins to arriving, nor the water starts arriving when the waking ends. No. The existence of water doesn't wait for the cessation of wave. The existence of water doesn't wait for the cessation of wave, because water exists. It is in the water alone wave appears. Similarly, it is the very existence of Sushupti. Therefore, then waking state merging into deep sleep, leaving samskara and again appearing, all this is Adhyasta. Therefore, Swamiji told, waking state itself is an imposition on the deep sleep. Deep sleep is a real existence. Waking is only appearance, false appearance. It is a misunderstanding. It is an error of the deep sleep. Therefore, a misunderstanding doesn't replace the adhisthana, replace the reality, replace the truth. Just as a wave cannot replace water, whether appearing wave or disappearing wave, neither can affect the existence of water. Apparent wave, appearance of the wave, non-appearance of the wave. These two, whether appearance or no appearance of the wave, do not affect the existence of water. Similarly, the existence of Sushupti, not existence of Sushupti. Sushupti is synonymous with existence. Existence is synonymous with Sushupti. It is synonymous with pure consciousness, non-dual, eternal, all-pervasive consciousness. Okay, so therefore, waking state is only a false appearance within the deep sleep. So, Vyakhyanakaras say the waking state goes into deep sleep and it remains there as a samskara, again reappears when the samskaras reproduce the waking state. But what Sachidananda Swamiji, even Shankara says is, waking state doesn't disappear because waking is never away from deep sleep. Just like wave was never away from water. Therefore, wave was never away from water. Wave doesn't exist apart from water. Therefore, calling deep sleep as a avyakta, as an unmanifest, is only an imposed one. It is a prakriya from the waking standpoint. Because you see the waking state now. In deep sleep, no waking experience. Again, you see the waking experience. Therefore, human mind imagines that in between it must have remained in some subtle form, invisible form, unknown form, unrecognizable form. The waking state must have existed in deep sleep in some form not visible to us, called impression or samskara, avyakta, unmanifest, whatever name you give. And again, therefore, it is a reappearing. So, human mind cannot imagine the total disappearance of waking state in deep sleep. Therefore, it imagines that it remains in some form. Therefore, Shruti, keeping this common man's view, it does the adhyaropa, that waking state disappears, means it merges into deep sleep and again reappears. Okay, but in fact, waking state doesn't merge, doesn't reappear, because waking state is inseparable from deep sleep. There is no question of appearing and disappearing. Appearance, disappearance, both are inseparable from the deep sleep. But assuming the waking state as a separate state, other than the deep sleep, when you assume the waking state, that means when you are looking from the waking state, it appears that this waking state tentatively merged into deep sleep and remained in some subtle form. So common man thinks, three things I told you. Common man thinking, Vyakhyanakara thinking, and Shankara's thinking. Shankara's prakriya. Common man thinks that waking world remains here when I go to sleep. I go to sleep personally, I alone individually go, the world remains outside. This is ridiculous to think, but how can the world remain when I myself am not waking? It's like saying that the dream world remains there even when I wake up from the dream. Does the dream state exist and continue to exist when I wake up from the dream? No. It's a false thinking. Similarly, when the waking state ceases, it exists nowhere. It exists only to the waker. When the waker ceases, state ceases. Okay. Therefore, common man thinks that the waking world exists outside when I am sleeping. This is wrong. Now the second is the Vyakhyanakaras, the post-Shankarites say that the waking state really goes into the deep sleep and remains there in unmanifest form and again reappears. And moreover, they say this world remains in a seed form, in the form of seed in the deep sleep, and that seed is experienced, they say. But this is wrong, because nobody has experienced the seed form of the world or the waking state during deep sleep. Deep sleep is no experience, no thought. By no experience, I mean there is no thought. I don't mean it is not an experience. Deep sleep itself is an experience without a thought. When I say it is not an experience, I mean there is no thought, there is no mind. No thought. Either a thought of presence or a thought of absence. Deep sleep is not a thought of absence. Note it. Deep sleep is not a thought of an absence, because there is no thought of presence. Consequently, there is no thought of absence either. Deep sleep is neither a thought of presence nor thought of absence. Deep sleep is neither a thought of presence nor thought of absence. Presence and absence, both of them don't exist. It is universal self-existing. Okay, but Vyakhyanakaras say that this world goes into the deep sleep and remains there in a seed form, causal form, and again it reappears at a later time. This is against our anubhava, because nobody has such an experience of deep sleep. Do you feel that something world is merging into you? There is no thought of world, no thought of merging, no thought of unconscious, subconscious or anything. Unconscious, subconscious is an imagination from the waking standpoint, but in the deep sleep there is no unconscious even. Okay. So what Sachidananda Swamiji or even Shankara says is, since we are seeing waking as a state, therefore we impose the unmanifest state, we impose the samskara of the waking state in deep sleep. Impose means we imagine its presence from the waking standpoint. From the waking standpoint, human mind cannot think of total erasure of waking state. Therefore, he imagines that waking state remains in some form in the deep sleep. And this imagination, the prakriya uses it, it says that it has merged into deep sleep and again reappears. It does the adhyaropa. Adhyaropa means it imposes and says that, it imposes that the waking state remained. So the avyaktam or samskaras are imposition alone, not a real existence. Vyakhyanakaras say samskaras really exist and really experienced. Neither they really exist nor really experienced. From the standpoint of snake, when you mistook rope for a snake in the room, you come out of the room, still your mind thinks that the snake is there. Okay. Again, after some time, after half an hour, you come into the room and see, again the snake appears. Then you imagined that half an hour before I saw the snake here, And now for a half an hour, I came out of the room and remained outside, hoping that the snake will go away. After half an hour, again I re-enter the room. I happen to see the snake lying there, same like before. Now what is your conclusion? During this half an hour my staying out, snake remained there, because it remained before half an hour and after half an hour also it is continuing. Therefore, it must be existing during that half an hour when I was outside. Okay, it imagines that the snake must be continuing. See, must be continuing. Note, he says that. That means he didn't see the continuation of the snake. He did not experience the continuation of the snake. Since he is finding the snake again after half an hour, he is imagining its presence in between for half an hour. He is stretching, he is extending the presence of snake during the appearance of the snake. The presence of snake during the appearance of the snake, this appearance of the snake he is extending into Sushupti where it doesn't exist. Still he is extending the waking experience into Sushupti. This is called Adhyaropa. You are stretching the experience of waking state. In the some form, some manner it remains within the deep sleep. You are extending, you are stretching the waking experience into deep sleep, but waking experience ceases with waking alone. Waking experience is experienced only through the waking state. When the waking state ends, waking experience cannot be extended anymore. No extension is possible because waking state ceases with the seizure of waking state. With the cessation of waking state, waking state ends. Waking world ends. It doesn't continue to exist in deep sleep. But he imagines that it continues to exist in deep sleep. This is Prakriya. This is Adhyaropa. Adhyaropa means wrongly extending the waking state into deep sleep and imagining that it exists there in some invisible form. Invisible itself means there is no experience of the world. Invisible means no experience. Yet you imagine its presence. It is not in your experience, yet you imagine its presence. This is called Adhyaropa. Okay. This is called Adhyaropa. So therefore, from the waking stand, Shruti does the extension. Extends its continuation in deep sleep. Vyakhyanakara says it really remains in the form of samskaras. Shankara says it doesn't remain. It only Shastra imposes, keeping the common man's view. It extends its existence into deep sleep. Okay. Therefore, the waking state or the waking world apparently seem to be present in deep sleep, invisibly, and again reappear. So this is a false, because in our experience, world doesn't continue in deep sleep. Do you experience the continuation of the world during deep sleep in some or other form? They say, now the Vyakhyanakaras, I don't want to go into detail, they give all kinds of arguments which all of them are wrong. All of them are wrong because it is against Anubhava. You don't need any logic. You don't need great genius. You don't need to be a great scholar of Vedanta. You don't need to be a great genius to just figure out, to understand this, that the waking state ceases with waking alone. Because waking appears with waking, then ceases with waking. Simple it is. Waking appears with waking. Waking doesn't appear when there is no waking. See, waking world doesn't appear when there is no waking state. Waking state appears only when there is waking state. Then waking state goes away with the waking state going. Therefore, it doesn't continue in deep sleep. That you imagine that there is a samskara in the deep sleep itself is an imposition. I am telling you, it is an imposition, it is a false thinking. It doesn't exist, no coming. That the mind thinks that the waking state is a continuous into deep sleep and again appears. This continuation appearance itself is an adhyaropa. It is a wrong thinking. It is a misunderstanding. Because it thinks that waking is something really there and really goes. Waking doesn't exist. There is no question of going and coming. That it is appearance itself is an adhyasa. So there is no question of going into deep sleep and again reappearing. Shruti does it only as a tentative acceptance. Shruti does the imposition. Imposition means doesn't exist. Overstretching where it is not there. It is not there, but you stretch it. So that's why we mean imposition. Imposition means assumption. You assume, though there is no basis, no experience. Experience doesn't support it, mind imagines. Why imagines? Because the waking standpoint is not removed totally, is not gone. As long as you retain the waking standpoint, mind keeps on imagining that it exists in some form. Why? Because you thought that, just as when you mistake rope for snake in the room, you come out of the room, still you imagine that the snake exists. Does snake exist? Tell me when you come out of the room. When you come out of the room for half an hour, did snake exist there? He says it must be. How? He doesn't say it is. To say it exists, you have to say I have seen it. Have you seen when you are outside the room for half an hour? Did you see? When you are out of the room, how can you see? When you are out of the room, you can't see. But you can only say it must be there, must have been there. On what basis? Because again you see the snake. When you are seeing the snake, you are extending its presence when it is not experienced. This is purely imagination. It is purely imagination. Your mind is extending its presence into deep sleep when it doesn't exist actually. Now the answer, now again I give the answer now, final answer. When I see the snake in the room, I saw it. When I come away, when I come out of the room, I don't see the snake. Then imagine that snake must have been there. Because after I go into the re-enter the room, again I see the snake. Now you say, it must be existing during that half an hour. Now my answer is, does it exist even when you are seeing the snake? Does the snake exist even when you are seeing? When there is no snake, even when you are seeing, how can it extend even when you are not seeing? This is the final answer. Note, I repeat this answer. Does the snake exist when you are seeing it? Then how can you extend its presence when you are not seeing it? So if you are extending means you are extending this very presence alone. Even while you are seeing it doesn't exist, you assume it is existing. Even when you are seeing, even when you are perceiving the snake under mistake, you are only falsely assuming. The same false assumption is extended when it is not perceived. Even when perceiving snake is not there, but you extend it when it is not perceived, the same false perception you extend it. So snake exists neither when you are perceiving nor when you are not perceiving. Okay. Snake exists neither when you are perceiving nor when you are not perceiving. Snake doesn't exist apart from rope. There is only rope alone. But assuming, taking that for granted that snake is, when I am perceiving the snake, you assume that snake is there. Then extend it. Extend means you assume falsely. You assume falsely. Similarly, even when you are in waking state, waking world doesn't exist. It is a false assumption that there is a waking state. Even when you are seeing waking, there is no waking world. Because it is an assumption. Mind is thinking that there is a world. When there is no waking world, even when you are in waking, then how can you extend its presence into the deep sleep? Just like a snake. Exactly like snake. Therefore, the very presence and absence do not replace the deep sleep. deep sleep is ever existing. It is the deep sleep alone is wrongly thought of as a waking state. Deep sleep alone is thought of wrongly as a waking state. Therefore, when the waking state ceases, still mind imagines it exists. It is extending that false assumption into deep sleep. Therefore, Vyakhyanakaras say that the deep sleep really exists in unmanifest state in a seed form. The seed form is imagined, is falsely extended. It is imposed. In Sutra Bhashya he says, Anumasyate. Sthiti drishya anumasyate. Sushuptau, it is inferred. Inferred means what? Mind is imagining. It is imagined. Inferred means it is imagined from the waking standpoint that it must have been there. It is like telling, when I come out of the dream, when I wake up from the dream, if somebody asks what happened to your dream, he says it must have been there. It must have been there is a wild imagination where it doesn't exist. In spite of its non-existence, it is a wild imagination. Similarly, you imagine waking state as if it existed in deep sleep. When it doesn't exist even in waking, where is the question of its continuation in the deep sleep? Okay, therefore, both are adhyaropa. Waking is adhyaropa. From this adhyaropa standpoint alone, you imagine that it exists in deep sleep. That is also adhyaropa. The direct waking is adhyaropa. Its continuation deep sleep, both are adhyaropa. That means in sushupti, both do not exist. Both do not exist. Neither waking nor its absence in deep sleep, neither presence nor absence. Presence and absence both are kalpita. They don't exist apart from deep sleep. Okay. Therefore, imagining, extending, falsely assuming the waking state, continuation of the waking state in deep sleep. Therefore, the samskara is only imagined. There is no samskara. Because waking as a state whole cannot have samskara, that we discussed last and in the beginning of the class also. Samskara, if it leaves samskara, where should it leave? It should live in the mind, but the entire mind is erased. Where will it live? Where will it live? I gave you another example in the beginning. If it is one part of mind, one small state of mind, when that state of mind ceases, the mind continues in another state. When the mind continues in another state, it can leave its samskara. But when you take the state as a whole, then the whole mind is taken into consideration. The state as a whole is synonymous to mind as a whole. If the mind as a whole is taken, when the waking ends, means mind ends, where does it leave samskara? You get the point? Where does it leave samskara? Because to leave the samskara, mind should exist. But mind itself, the whole mind goes away. Goes away means what? It is inseparable from the sushupti. It doesn't exist apart from sushupti. When the wave doesn't appear, where does the wave go? It doesn't go, no, because it neither comes nor goes. It is same as water, falsely thought of as wave. It is falsely thought of as a wave, but otherwise, in reality, it is nothing but water. Similarly, waking as a state is falsely thought of as a state. In fact, it is nothing but deep sleep. Therefore, waking, appearance of waking and tentatively disappearing, both are false impositions on deep sleep, which is natural and self-existing. Deep sleep is natural and self-existing. And that self-existing non-dual consciousness is wrongly thought of as a waking and wrongly thought as continuing to exist in deep sleep. Okay. I think we'll stop this. We'll continue this in the next class. This point, I don't know whether it is clear. But anyway, even if it is clear, it needs to be explained once again so that it gets reinforced. This same point again I reinforce because it's the most important thing, and we'll tell this in the next class again. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om Tat Sat.